Hey everyone, I'm MJ again, and here's David. This is Database, and we're here to talk a lot of different things. First off, we're gonna pick up from the previous week where we had a bet about the Lakehouse versus Warehouse and the whole kind of like watermarking approach, or just do the upserts and everything. So we'll talk about that, and then I think we're gonna go beyond that as well, Dave. Once we get those results, and then at the last part, we're going to talk about real-time intelligence of Fabric and like why is this a thing and why we want to explore more about these capabilities, right? So I guess over to you first, Dave. Like,
Thank you. Let me share my screen. So let me know when you can see it. So this is the what's it called, fabric capacity matrix. It kind of monitors all the different tasks and how much computing unit is actually consuming. And I've selected just the past few days because that's kind of where some of the things are kind of happening. And as you can see here, right, what I want to pay attention to is this two, and then also this two, right? So in the pipeline, so this one is the data warehouse incremental refresh pipeline, and then this is the data lake delta override pipeline. I say delta override, that's actually slightly misleading. So we're just doing the override for the whole thing. The surprising thing here is the DL data override is actually lower. And that's really surprising for me because if I think about it, right? So I do the incremental refresh. I'm only literally loading the data, right? Like the delta. Like if I look at the historical thing, there might be like 400 records every day. There's like 10, 12 records coming in. I'm only loading that 10 to 12. So in theory, the incremental refresh should be quite light. But in comparison, the data lake is actually lighter. So just in terms of the background infrastructure, we have ADLS Gen 2. That's where the JSON files are being stored. So we run a copy activity. So in this pipeline, it's nothing else, just a copy activity. And in that copy activity, we just go load everything. I think every hour from memory. I could be wrong, but the two are the same. Load everything every hour and just override, keep on overriding it. So the original thinking is, okay, the data lake from Fabric, it should actually consume more compute because it's overriding all the history every single time. But in fact, it's about a bit over a third. I think maybe about 40% of the compute consuming, like 40% of the CUs. Oh, probably actually less than a third. Sorry, I was looking at the wrong one. In terms of the CUs, it's less than a third. Probably about 30%, right? So that's really interesting from my perspective. You wanna add some comments to that?
well, um, again, I'm not surprised, to be honest, because architecturally speaking, I kind of like assumed that already, that it's not a lot,
And
because
you say this now. Like last week,
yeah,
I was saying, "Do you think it's gonna
yeah, yeah,
double?" And
yeah,
you were hesitant to place a
yeah,
bet. And
because
now you're saying this. Like, oh,
yeah, yeah, because if you come to think of it, right? Like in Fabric, what is the how is the data stored, right? It's stored in one lake, right? That's one. Sorry. We use ADLS Gen 2 here, right? Like we did a
yeah,
shortcut, right?
yeah.
So that's one aspect, right? Like so we use a shortcut. Second is in Fabric and with the Delta override, what do you actually use? You use Spark, right? And
Yep.
Spark is really, battle tested, very efficient with this type of things. Yeah, and again, because throughout the years and years, right? Like it's really meant to do these upserts, right? It's really meant to do this like lake house, lake type of thing where you like just dump all the data in there. You don't even have to care if it's gigabytes, megabytes, so on and so forth. Um, I mean, you need to care, but it's like it's not a concern. Like the storage size itself is not of the concern, right?
Mm.
Hence it just follows that same concept, man. Like because it's an upsert operation and it's Parquet, Delta Parquet, and it's like Spark. It just kind of like meant to do that, right? Which is what I told
You,
last week, right? It's just really meant
do you
to do
think
that.
do you think that the fact that it's in ADLS Gen 2 that's the part that kind of already handled some of the compute and the complexity of the whole thing? Like if it's in a different type of storage via shortcut, might be that there might be more workload that's required, do you
Um,
think?
Probably not really. Yeah,
So even to
because
AWS S3, do you
yeah,
think it will?
maybe it would require depends on the volume and the operation. Because we're just doing copy activity here, right? Like we're not really doing
Yeah,
transformation. And at the same time, we, like because it's ADLS Gen 2 and it's Azure, obviously there's the networking latency aspect as well, right? So
yeah,
yeah, I think it would factor in, like if it's an AWS S3, but it's not the determining factor.
yeah,
It's really more around like the format or the type of the data, right? But then let's say for argument's sake, if you're trying to compare, this delta override versus, let's say, coming from SQL Server, um,
yeah.
that's just way beyond. Like you have to really do a more CU operation for that,
Mm.
right? But this one is because it's storage to storage type of thing. It's literally just dropping files and like making sure you use the Delta Parquet format, which is again easier,
It's
right?
yeah, it's easier, it's more efficient, and it just it's cost less as well. So
Yeah,
really, there's no reason why. Unless there's very specific reasons, like there's some legacy stuff that it has to be done in a certain way. But if you're kind of starting from scratch, maybe the default option is to consider just data lakehouse, yeah, and just use but if you're using copy, just override the whole thing. Don't need to worry about this whole watermarking thing at
yeah,
all. The other interesting, yeah,
yeah. And if you just go back a little bit of the history, right? And I think we've talked about this in the past episode or so. Um, because the warehouse is trying to do things like you get like gazillions of databases and you just want to like work on some of this for reporting purposes, and like that's why you're doing the warehousing concept. But in lake
mm,
houses, that concept doesn't really apply. It's like,
yeah.
you know what, just dump all the data in there, like just put it in there, we'll figure it out as you go along. Do you have to do this, do you have to do that? Just by that concept alone, that just serves the whole lake experience, the whole lake house experience.
Now we kind of going ahead with okay, Lakehouse. The way to go. It's got so many benefits from a reporting perspective as well, because we can use direct lake, etc. And so the next step after we've done the copy is to transform the data a little bit. Unfortunately, I haven't got the whole enough time to actually do this properly, like to the end. So let's try to complete it today if we've got enough time. So again, the first thing, I've done the copy into the Lakehouse, and if we look at Lakehouse, there is the tables underneath. There's this fact weather demo. Just ignore the cross for now. And yeah, so
Just,
what I'm
just,
doing
just a
here.
quick one, Dave, here. Like this is already sitting on lake house, right? It's not shortcut anymore.
This is sitting in the lake. This
Yeah,
table
yeah, yeah.
is,
This is a table in the lake house, right?
yeah, yeah. So we got a shortcut here.
Yeah,
This is
which we
the JSON
converted into a
demo.
table. Yeah, which we converted into a table.
Yeah, which we, if I go back a little bit, so this is our current pipeline for the direct lake. Oh, sorry, Lakehouse. So it's only the copy in here. And what I'm thinking is after the data has been copied, there will be another step. Once it's successful, you will have the transformation step in here. And as part of the transformation step, you will also store the data into like a silver tier table inside the Lakehouse. So that's kind of the thinking here with the notebook that, okay, I've loaded the data, and then I just want to do some simple transformations. I noticed there's some dots in the column names. It doesn't seem to like it very much, so I just need to change it. So the process for PySpark is different from pandas, right? So so there's just a few things to be aware of, but the concept is really the same. And here I'm also adding some columns. I'm converting the datetime UTC timestamp into like a proper time, and also changing the Kelvin temperature into Celsius.
Yeah.
So that's the step that I'm trying to complete in here. And
Yeah.
if I
By the
just
way,
quickly,
just a quick one. This is that part where I really think notebook is the right approach rather than doing this on data flows or pipeline. Like I prefer it to be in notebook. Although you can do this in pipeline as well in one way or the other. But yeah, like I think this
Is that
flexibility, this customness is something I would really like to do on notebooks, just for readability and like just for that point of view that you're now beyond just copying data. Now you're really doing transformations and like silver operations pretty much.
is that a personal preference, or is
Yeah, that's a
there
personal
like
preference. Yeah.
yeah, okay. I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
sorry,
Again, you
yeah.
can do this in Power Query, right? Like, and again with data
Yeah.
flows and everything. Like, but for me, I just like to do this in notebooks because for me it just makes a lot of logical sense to do this in notebooks.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Oh, that would be my preference as well. Just switching from pandas into PySpark. Some commands are slightly different, but it's a very easy switch. So just run those, and here's kind of result just to validate it. But for me here's where I need some help from you as well. I want to load the data into another table in here, right?
uh,
Oh, is it this one?
yeah, DF, right? Yeah, you just do a DF that, right?
Delta, then we just need a table name. Like when is silver? When do we flag the silver? Do we put it in the name to say silver?
Um, yeah. Again, it depends on how far you are in this whole kind of like data mesh and Italian architecture concept.
Yeah.
Um, sometimes, and I think my general recommendation as well is that it's a separate lakehouse of its own. Like it's a separate lakehouse database. Silver is
Uh,
treated like a separate lakehouse database. Just again for point of view of this is a weather data lakehouse, and now let's say you want to create weather forecasting report or something, right? Or something like that. And then now silver is something much more domain written or domain concept of like, oh, what's this data? This is weather data, uh, Lakehouse on silver, which is like it's already validated or something. That's why just separating from what's raw and what's from um, like
so
just
not just in the naming, but in fact like physically separated as well.
yeah, yeah. And,
Cool.
and sometimes it might even be at a separate workspace as well. Again, depends on how far you are.
Yeah. Let's for now, let's maybe just try this.
Just use the same lake house for now. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, because I just want to call out the reason for that as well, because the security model of Lakehouse is within the Lakehouse. You
Mm.
can't just say, "Oh, David, I'm only gonna allow you access to the date calendar and fact weather demo, and you won't be able to access other tables." Yeah, that's not a thing in Lakehouse at the moment. That's a warehouse thing, right? And you can do
Yeah.
specific, closures and stuff. Um, yeah,
Oh, that's
that's why.
interesting.
Yeah,
So when I assign roles, you're saying that so with warehouse, I can assign roles for views as well, right? I can go to
yeah,
that level,
yeah, yeah.
but in Lakehouse, that's at least for now, it's not that's
Yes.
not an option. So when you get access to Lakehouse, you get access to everything in the Lakehouse.
Yeah.
All right, well, that's definitely interesting. So we've done this we've
Ah,
done transformation,
yeah.
and now we've finished the writing as well. So we've got a new table here. And just to double check that in the end, I have my temperature in Celsius. I've got my local daytime as well. And so this create my Power BI report
Yeah,
from here
yeah,
as
you
well,
should
right?
be able to.
Mm,
You probably need, yeah, it's either you go to semantic model.
yeah, I just go weather report. And I only need this and my calendar. Oh, I don't have a date, so I won't be able to join that, create that relationship. We have two tables in this semantic
Okay.
model, and you can tell from the logo here, it's a direct link. And let me try. I don't think this is going to work, but let's try it anyway. So I'm trying to create a relationship between a date time column and a date column and see if it complains.
Oh, maybe, yeah.
No, it hasn't complained yet. I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know whether it's going to work later on, but at least it hasn't complained yet. So,
Okay.
from
Your report?
here, I'll just create one measure here. Minimum temperature equals to the minimum of only like an average. This one here. Okay, so that's my measure. And from here, I can create a new report. It's okay, but we can see that, okay, this is how the minimum temperature is changing based on the measure that I've just created. So from here, I can just continue with my Power BI report development. From the backend semantic model, I can add calculation group, etc. I can do a lot of things in here as well. And the beauty of here is that this is direct link, right? I don't need to worry about any data refresh. I don't need to, what I do need to do is to actually add that notebook activity in here. So I'll just quickly come here, add the notebook. So what this is saying is, okay, when the copy data, so this is the override data lake approach. And then once that's completed successfully, then just run the notebook part, which kind of transform the data. Yeah, so what I've got this, and the next thing I need to do, I just need to schedule this one to be running every hour, every 2 hours, whatever, start date. What am I missing here? Why
I
don't
think
you?
this is
Oh, it's already on.
Yeah, it's already
Yeah, it's
on.
already on. Yeah, cool. All right. And that's it. That's it. Like at a high level, we can get fancier with Power BI reports, but I think the whole concept, we've managed to cover that in 3 videos. We started from ADLS Gen 2, created a shortcut, compared the data warehouse and the data lake approach. And we concluded that, well, actually, data lake is the Lakehouse is actually a better way of doing it. Today, we've then created the notebook to transform the data, add it into the pipeline, created a very simple semantic model with one measure, and then also a Power BI report out of it as well. So I'm quite happy with what we've achieved so far.
That was really good. That was really good. And I think along the way we've kind of like discussed a lot of different approach and different, this and that. And like it really just shows that Fabric is very flexible, right? Like there's just no one way of doing things. Um, yeah, I guess. But one thing though that kind of like a good segue to the next topic is that because this is telemetry data, right? Like weather is a telemetry data. I think the much appropriate way of doing this is through real time, like through telemetries and like through events, right? Like because right now, if you look at it, even though we're using the lake house concept, we're still batching, things, right? Like every 2 hours or so, we kind of like ingest the data in there, we upsert into the lake house and so on. We're still batching that. So in a way, your weather data or your weather report is not yet real time. It's like a 2 hour real time thing.
Yep.
Which is again for majority of the scenarios that's really fine. But then the next part of the evolution is like how do we make it real time, right? So because at the same time, what you don't want to end up happening is that copy data activity, you run it every 1 minute, right? Or every 30 seconds, right? You don't, and run the notebooks every 30 seconds, right? Like that's the wrong approach of doing real time,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
Yeah, so that's why let me share my screen now. Now let's do a
Yep.
gentle introduction on the real-time intelligence in Fabric. So I think throughout the podcast or like this recording so far, we've kind of like tackled one lake a lot, data factory, with the copy activity, then data engineering with your notebooks, and then a little bit of warehousing, especially last week. And we haven't touched the data science much, but with the notebook experience, you kind of like showed that real quick. And then Power BI, of course, we've talked about Power BI over and over. But yeah, like real time is one of the workloads across, the major, I guess, like primary workloads of Fabric, right? And we haven't really explored much about it. And again, I want to, personally, I want to explore more around this. There's a keen interest on my end, and so on and so forth, coming from like a platform experience in real time aspect. And yeah, like that's kind of like my motivation why I want to do more content around real time intelligence, because this is kind of like the new shiny thing that Fabric is differentiating from as well. So, all right. So for next week, we'll talk about more about the real-time intelligence, like the different components of it. What is real-time, like this concept of event house, real-time dashboards, and so on and so forth. And then something I also want to touch next week is this, the past way, which is something I'm much more familiar with, versus now the Fabric SaaS way, right? Again, very something that really piques my interest. All right. But then again, that's for next week. Okay. So
Awesome.
thanks
Looking
everyone for
forward.
watching, and we'll see you soon.